and you can't find certain things. So, I always, if I'm asked, I tell people, get the autopsy done and answer your questions and have it in place. And you'll know then one way or the other. People make big mistakes in failing to do that.
I have a couple other questions for you. One is in your book, From Crime Scene to Courtroom, examining the mysteries behind famous cases, Michael Jackson, Casey Anthony, Drew Peterson, Brian Jones, and more, that you wrote with Dawna Kaufmann.
Yes.
She did a great job, too.
Dawna is wonderful. She and I have collaborated on this book and the previous book, A Question of Murder, dealing with Anna Nicole Smith and Daniel Smith and so on. Dawna is a fantastic writer and a tremendous investigator. She's wonderful.
You make a great team.
Well, we do. We enjoy working with each other. And this book, From Crime Scene to Courtroom, we've gotten so many wonderful comments and accolades on, because we were right up to date with Jackson and Casey Anthony,
right?
Peterson still to come up, and so on. Some excellent cases.
So I want to ask you a question. On page 104, you said, reasonable doubt does not mean reason to doubt. Can you explain it to us?
Well,
because I think most of us don't understand how that whole thing happened.
It's a play on words, yeah. Which case is that referring to?
Casey Anthony.
Casey Anthony, yeah. Reasonable doubt is not the same as reason to doubt. Well, I guess the point we were making is that just because sometimes you're not given a complete answer, and there can then be some reasonable doubt, that in certain cases, in my opinion, should not be construed as, should not be accepted as being
guilty.
Guilty or not guilty. So you got to think through things. Forensic science is not an absolute science. That's the point I wish to make. I constantly make it and remind my colleagues too. We are not physicists, chemists, or mathematicians or astronomers. Forensic scientists can have differences of opinion, and the field itself, as pointed out by the National Academy of Science, is not perfect. The only incontrovertible forensic science is cellular DNA, not even mitochondrial DNA, only cellular DNA. We used to think that fingerprints. Well, the Bradley Mayfield case, looked that up, following the bombing of a train outside Madrid in Spain, and the FBI identified fingerprints that they said belonged to a lawyer in Oregon named Bradley Mayfield, and the Spanish authorities disagreed, and ultimately it was shown not to be Bradley Mayfield. So fingerprints are not 100%. And things like hair and fiber analysis and so on, something that forensic scientists have to keep in mind. So coming back then to your question, and as it applies and plays out in a trial, the fact that not everything is answered for you with 100% precision and absolute certainty should not cause you to, I think, play out to the point that you don't accept something. You see, that's the purpose of that statement. I think that's the point that we were trying to make. That and in fact, a good judge a good attorney will object, and a good judge will not permit a medical scientific person to make a statement with absolute scientific certainty. Should not allow that, and good judges will not. You express your opinions, quote, with reasonable medical or scientific certainty or reasonable medical scientific probability. That's the language that is used in courts in America. You don't give opinions with absolute certainty. That, in my opinion, is wrong and should not be engaged in by a good, honest forensic scientist.
You said the Casey Anthony verdict was a bizarre aberration. The best news
Yes.
is that it will be discussed in law schools and in the media for years to come. It's
Yes.
not justice for this poor slain child, but it will have to be enough. You also talked about sometimes we'll never know every detail of a crime, but reasonable doubt doesn't mean finding a reason to doubt. It means using logic and evidence to create a plausible scenario. And then you talked about the Casey Anthony case.
Right, exactly. And that's gets back to what I just said. Remember this. 99% of murders eliminating those manslaughter situations, and somebody gets teed off at someone in a bar and shoots or stabs or beats him or something. But let's talk about murders that occur in a more private fashion. 95% are not going to have eyewitnesses. Think about that. So then what are you dealing with? You're dealing with evidence. And so now you got to apply the reasonable man, reasonable woman approach, and so on. You can't say, well, gee, nobody saw him, or how do we know there were Casey Anthony, a 2-year-old child found buried in the swamp? What? And she never told her for 1 month. 1 month living with her parents, she never told them that the child was missing. And made up a cockamamie story about some babysitter that doesn't even exist and never did exist. I'm not prosecutorially biased. I'm maybe the least prosecutorially biased forensic pathologist practicing actively in America, a well-known thing around the circuit, believe me. But I'll state without any hesitation, I think the Casey Anthony verdict was an abomination. It was a verdict of a jury that must have come from a distant planet.
I don't know if it was you or your colleague had said that the attorney for Casey Anthony had a cosmic clearance, security clearance?
Cosmic security clearance? Oh, you mean, that's a facetious type comment.
I didn't know what does that mean?
I think that's pure sarcasm.
Okay, very good. Good to note.
A cosmic, with envy, I give credit to Dawna.
Do you think that it is in the best interest of the legal profession and justice in general where the accused does not have to take the stand?
Well, I do agree with that policy. It's as you know, it goes back to English common law, centuries and centuries. And no, I agree. And of course, you pay a price. Look, I think in the majority, in my opinion, I don't know how to prove this, in my opinion, I think it winds up hurting the defendant by not taking the stand. Many kinds of cases where, the question is, he wasn't there, or certain things didn't happen, or so on. The jury wants to hear, don't they? They want to hear. But it's a strategic decision to be made by the defendant and her attorney. On the other hand, they may feel that going on the witness stand will open up too many other doors and so on. So I think the rule in place is one that is honored in time over the centuries, and I think it'll remain in place, likely forever in a democracy like ours as we know it today. But does it thwart justice? No, it makes it more difficult maybe for the jury and so on. But it's a dangerous game for the defendant. But the danger of going on the stand is just greater. So you pick the lesser of two evils.
You said that you were concerned that some new forensic technology like air sampling and post-mortem hair, is it binding or banding?
Yeah, banding.
Banding and computer software analysis may be looked at in courtrooms as junk science versus potent tools. Is that because of the Casey Anthony case?
Well, yeah, I'm referring to some things in the Casey Anthony case, and I get the point that Don and I were making there is that I believe that sort of stuff should be admissible and given whatever weight a jury wants to give. Remember, in the Casey Anthony case, some people have criticized that and called it junk science. The fact of the matter is that the person who gave that testimony is the guy who is the lead scientist in the body farm in Tennessee. This guy, they bury bodies under all kinds of conditions, and then they go, to see how the body decomposes in sand, in mud, in water, in cold and heat, and so on and so forth. This guy, this is what he does for a living. Well, if a guy like that can't testify about the very special odor of a dead body, then who can? You see what I mean? So that's why I'm saying some people who have called that junk science, it depends on who's giving it. I don't think that someone who just has seen an occasional body or so on would be an appropriate person. But I've smelled I don't know how many dead bodies. Well, the 17,000 that I've done myself and others that I've attended, over the years, I think I have some idea of how a dead body smells.